Hi painters, it's Diane McNaughton here. Welcome to my watercolor painting channel. In this video I'm going to feature the art of glazing. So what is glazing? Glazing means glass-like, and it's part of the layering process. And it's the process whereby you lay down a complete, clear, transparent layer over an already dry layer of paint. And the effect you get is a sort of optical mixing. Now it's a good idea to change your water if you're going to work with glazes, so you've got really clean, lovely, fresh water. I've taken a little piece of paper here and I've painted a flat wash with yellow on it, and I'm just going to show you glazing other colours over it. I'm going to take a red, there we go, and I'm just going to run it very carefully over my piece of paper. Like that. And then I'm going to let that dry and see what happens. Let's take a bit of blue this way. I'm going to take a bit of cobalt blue. I'm just running it over the other end so you can see the difference of the colour. Now, you can see there's a change in the colour. You create some sort of greeny colours with yellow and blue, and warm colours with yellow and red. Now, what are the advantages of glazing? Well, glazing, it's a great thing to do if you have that fear of the white paper, and you just cover your paper, most of it with some very pale yellow, and you get into your painting, so it's a great advantage of that way. Then another advantage is if you've created a bit of a muddy bit on your painting and you want to somehow help your painting, you don't like that bit of mud, you can always take a colour to warm it up. So I've got a little bit of muddy grey here, and I'm going to paint. Be careful you don't lift the colour from underneath. We go, and it sometimes can save your painting. It creates and it changes that mud into something more interesting. Now, another advantage of glazing, I've got an old bit of paper painting here. I started painting on some leaves and I didn't really enjoy it. It got all too hard edged, and I'm just going to show you. I want to put this leaf back a little bit, so I'm sending it back and I'm going to cool it off. Now, if you understand about warm and cool colors, of course blue is often quite cool and yellow and red can be warm. Not always, but we're going to do that, use that here. So I'm going to just put a little blue glaze over this leaf here to knock it back a bit and to cool it off. Now I've got to be careful I don't lift some of these darks. So it can make other areas more dominant. So I've just, there we go, just flood a bit of blue into it, and then under here. And then it makes other areas stick out. And now let's warm this area up here. Let's take a little bit of yellow. And I want to just glaze this area with yellow. It changes the painting quite a bit. So you only need to glaze some areas. You don't have to glaze the whole thing. It's just some areas that need a little bit of a lift sometimes. Here we go. So I've brightened that area up and I've cooled that area down. And then this leaf has now become more sort of dominant, and that leaf. So I can decide what I want to do. I'm going to use these 3 apples in my demo. They're gorgeous red colour. I'm starting my glazing process putting on a layer of blue paint, and I'm using the blue to mark out where my shadows are. This is quite different from the normal watercolour process. You don't come in with your darks until the end layers, but this is sort of a reversed thing. with glazing. So I'm starting with my blue layer. This is a really fun thing to do. There's no choices. You don't have to choose what colors. You're just painting the light and the dark areas with a very faint blue wash. I don't want to go dark here at all at the moment because I'm going to come over with other glazes. Softening, just softening the edges there. Don't want too many hard lines at the moment. And then my third apple here, also I don't want it too dark. It's got a nice light area on the top of it, which I'm going to paint by painting the background with the same blue glaze. So that shows me my edge of the apple by doing negative painting behind the apple. And it doesn't have to be too flat, just a few squiggles here, soft lines here and there, hard lines. I'm going to glaze over that as well with the various colours. I think my layer's just about done. A few little squiggles here and I think that's it. I've let that layer dry completely. You can use your hairdryer if you want to on a low heat. Now I'm coming over with my yellow layer. And I'm kind of sporadically putting on, I'm not keeping in between the lines. I just need to actually keep some of those there. I've left some little highlights there on the apples, so I would like to keep those light. It doesn't matter if they become yellow. So this is not a formal glaze where I'm covering the whole paper. I'm actually sporadically covering the paper. So I get some interesting marks in that background as well. Now there are some nice yellow bits on these apples, so I'm adding a little bit more stronger paint there. That layer is now dry and I'm coming on with my red. I'm using Alizarin Crimson this time. Now this is not so easy because you've got to see where you want to be. I'm also going to be adding some yellow with this, so it's not just a red layer. We are now painting the apples. I want to keep that light up there on that apple. And a bit of yellow. I've added a bit of yellow there, so it mixes on the paper. And I've made a soft edge at the top there where the paint will go up into the background, but I'm okay with that. I can always deal with it later, lifting it out if it's too much. But I like what's happening there. It gives a loose feel to the painting so that you don't get these hard edges all the way around the apples. You'll notice that the shape of the apples, they're not completely round. Just look at your apples very carefully. They have all these sort of funny little edges and bends to them as they go round. So try and paint those because it gives the apple character. And I'm trying to get as much strong colour into that apple as I can in one go. But yeah, of course when it dries you've got to see how it looks, because it always fades and it might need another layer, but we'll just see. Add more, really strong. It's going to sink down into that shadow, so I must just watch it that it doesn't get too strong. It's getting quite strong above the apple, so I'm just going to lift some of that and waft it off into the background. It takes a bit of doing this, controlling all the paint, which is wet in some places. Right, let me come with this next apple. Bit of yellow to start with, and then let's add some of the red. I want it to mix nicely on the paper. keeping to those shadow areas where it goes in where the stalk is. A nice little shadow there. Then there's a bit of light around that area that I need to try and keep. I want to join this other apple, which is sort of just behind the middle apple, so I want a connection there, but there is a bit of light on the sides, so it's got a hard line down to the middle and then it joins together. Just softening that shadow area while I'm at it, always keeping an eye on what I've painted already. As it dries, slightly dries, I can soften some areas. I don't want too much of a hard line under the apples where they come into their shadow at this point. I can decide that later. Let's paint this other third apple. Bit of yellow there. It doesn't have to be such a strong colour as the middle apple. Slightly behind, so I'm creating a sort of area of distance. It looks a bit strange, that bumpiness, so I'm just going over it. I've let that layer dry. Now I'm coming in with a bit of stronger red paint where the stalk is and where it goes in at the apple. I'm not putting any blue there, I just want to put red at the moment, stronger red paint. The blue can be quite dark and disorientating at the moment, so I want it. I can always change it. Just having a look. Let's do this apple. I think I'm quite happy with the apple that's behind. Just adding a little bit of glaze to the foreground there with the red. I'm taking the Pyrrol Scarlet, it's really a lovely red, and adding that to the front of this apple and the one next to it. Making it really warm so that the apple sort of comes forward. And then I'm going to put in some of the blue shadow underneath and let the two colours mix at the bottom there. Pyrrol Scarlet is a lovely colour. I prefer it to cadmium red, even though it's a similar colour. It mixes better and is more transparent than cadmium red. Just had a look at my painting and I've decided I need to put more yellow into the side of this apple. So I'm taking my soft watercolour brush, which is damp, and lifting some of the paint and then dabbing it off with my tissue, and then I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to it. So it's a yellow glaze. See, there it is. So it's just about finished now, and I've decided to add a little bit of dark to the side of the apple. And this is what you do at the end of a painting. You see what needs to be done. Just needs a little bit of dark, and I think that's it. So here is the finished painting featuring glazing. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please click on Show More for a list of the materials.